Hey everybody, welcome to How to Be Mesmerizing. It's Tim Shurr, and in our special CEO Secrets series, we have another incredible leader with us today. Lynn Greenberg is with us. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
It's such an honor for you or for us to be with you today. To have you on the show. So you are the founder of PIVT, a business social app designed to reduce turnover and improve the well-being of relocated mobile and remote employees. And
Yes.
I'm really excited to talk with you because a lot of my C-suite friends are having trouble recruiting people and retaining top talent, and because they have a remote workforce and they have people that are relocated and all over the place. They weren't sure how to increase engagement, and you have solutions for all of that. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So let's talk about the early days of PIVT, and that is PIVT, if anybody wants to look that up, and all the info will be in the show notes. So you landed a job in London with Bloomberg, which is very impressive, and found a lot of challenges when relocating to a new city, especially overseas, about where to go and what to do and how to build a network from scratch. So tell us a little bit about your early journey and how PIVT came into being.
Absolutely. So I graduated from college and about 3 weeks later moved to London to work for Bloomberg.
Wow.
And, I was 21 years old at the time, didn't know anyone, and faced the issue that all people do when moving to a new and unfamiliar place, which is how do you go about making your new city feel like home? And so there were two things that I really needed. The first was information on my city from people I trusted. I didn't know where to live. I didn't know which bank to join, where to take my mom for dinner when she came to visit, things I didn't want to rely on a Google or TripAdvisor for. And then
Yes.
the second piece was, of course, how do you recreate your network from scratch?
Mm-hmm.
Because as anyone that moves knows, it's friends you need the most when you're adjusting to a new and unfamiliar place.
Yeah.
So spoke to other colleagues of mine at Bloomberg with the London office being the international hub, and quickly realized that it was a problem much bigger than just myself.
Mm-hmm.
And tried everything around the sun, from dating apps to meetups to going to bars by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just kept thinking to myself two things. The first is I'm a relatively, outgoing person. So
Mm-hmm.
if this is difficult for me, it must be difficult across the board. And
Mm-hmm.
the second piece was I knew that I had a network in London, be that friends, people from my hometown, university, friends of friends, but there
Mm-hmm.
was no way to connect with those people in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm.
And so, thus became, drove PIVT, and happy to tell you about, the journey from taking one business class in college to ultimately growing a business.
Yeah. I mean, a whole other education when you're actually out there in the world doing it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow.
All driven by curiosity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you're a true entrepreneur. Curiosity, finding a problem and thinking you can solve it, and then figuring it out as you go along, because we really have no idea. And then we just keep learning and growing and expanding. And then before you know it, you're in it. And you've attracted some pretty extraordinary people and investors and board members. And I mean, it's a really impressive story. So as it turned out, like you said, you weren't the only one feeling isolated. You've said that the number one concern for relocated and mobile employees is their social well-being, which makes sense.
Yeah.
So despite the fact that companies expense millions of dollars annually on relocation packages, the most important social piece is often left out. So that leads to turnover, millions of dollars in lost production time and revenue, and most importantly, lonely employees and family members. So you determined to find a better way. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So as you said, so actually we started out as a consumer app for
Mm-hmm.
people moving and traveling to help acclimate in their new city.
Yeah.
And we were live on the App Store and Google Play in New York and London, where we
Mm-hmm.
had, a large user base. When after 6 months, we were approached by some large companies that
Mm-hmm.
said, we came across your platform. We love what you're building. It's
Mm-hmm.
something we're struggling with internally with our relocated employees and business travelers. Is this something you'd be interested in building for businesses? We
Mm.
ultimately went back to the drawing board and found, the statistics that you just mentioned, which were just staggering.
Yeah.
And ultimately, as a founder, I went back to the reason why I started this platform was to create a platform where people could take those life-changing opportunities like I was giving in London,
Hmm.
and make the most of them because they're able to feel that sense of belonging and home. And
Mm.
ultimately, this was just a different way to, get to that end goal. And so with a true problem there, we really dove into being a B2B product. And that's really what we've been focusing on ever since, which of course, as I'm sure we'll talk about later, has had tremendous implications during the pandemic.
Yeah, for sure. So how does your app, differ from Facebook or a different type of social app?
So Pivot is specifically built with this type of user in mind. And so, one of the things that we do is Pivot is given to you the moment you find out that you're relocating.
Hmm.
So that you can connect with the people that you know and should know in your new location ahead of time. So you could
Okay.
get the most trusted advice and make social plans when you arrive.
Mm.
The other thing that we do is we give you free access to family members because actually 70% of relocations fail, not because the actual employee has difficulty acclimating, but because the partner, spouse, family member has trouble doing
Mm.
so. And
Yeah.
really, the exciting part about us being a B2B product is that everyone on the platform, as I mentioned, is in the same exact situation. They
Hmm.
understand what you're going through.
Hmm.
There's no solicitation or advertisement.
Hmm.
So you can, rest assured that every single recommendation is coming from a point where they're not trying to sell you on something,
Yeah.
as opposed to a Facebook or a meetup.
Hmm.
And really, what we try to do is we try to connect you with the people that matter. So people from that came from your hometown, university, workplace, same language.
Hmm.
So that as opposed to a meetup where you have to be at a specific time at a specific place,
Hmm.
you could start taking advantage, wherever you want, whenever you want, in the palm of your hands, and connecting directly with the people that can give you the information and the friendship you need.
Wow. It's so 21st century now, in the world we're moving into. So very cool. So the new market reality is that 1 in 5 Americans have relocated due to COVID, as you mentioned, and the newfound ability to work from anywhere. So companies can spend up to $90,000 or more relocating an employee. Yet a third of those same people will often leave after the move, and maybe because of what you said, with family members not feeling connected. So Pivot is addressing the billions in losses to employers by creating a mobile app designed to reduce employee turnover and improve the well-being of relocated, remote, and mobile employees. So tell us how you're serving um, this new generation of digital nomads.
Yeah, so, how much time do you have? Because, I can go on for days about this, but really what we're seeing as you mentioned the statistic, 1 in 5 Americans are relocating on their own due to the fact that they can now work more flexibly. By the
Hmm.
end of 2021, that number will hit 23 million people.
Wow.
And so, this has led to a number of implications. The first is, as you know, there's been, great attention around this war for talent and the great resignation.
Hmm.
And companies are now looking for new ways to attract and retain talent in new ways because, traditional employee benefits like really great office space, unlimited snacks in the office are no longer tied to attracting and retaining talent if they're no longer going into the workplace.
Yeah.
And so, really what companies are diving into is this new need for what employees are looking for. And so that buckets into a couple of different things. The first thing is, if employees want to work remotely or work from anywhere,
Hmm.
how do we support them and create a strong company culture digitally?
Hmm.
That's a really big challenge that they're facing. How do we support them socially?
Hmm.
Because a lot of these social interactions that occur for adults occur in the office space.
Hmm.
And so, if they're now working alone or they're working remotely, how do we fill that void? And then, the last aspect is how do we support them in new ways? Be that, well-being benefits, mental health, social well-being, and also, how do we support their life as that is quickly intertwining with their work? And so that includes everything from, how do we support their new lifestyle? How do we support their families? And I think, Tim, we spoke about last time the idea around job embeddedness, which we talk about a lot
Mhm.
at Pivot, which is the idea that the more the more the company can help you intertwine with the community, and not
Mhm.
just you, but your family, whether that
Mhm.
be, connect you to a church or a temple,
Mhm.
connect you to soccer games, or things that you can kind of do outside of work, the
Mhm.
more likely you are to stay in that job.
Mhm.
And so, I think that's a really compelling argument for these companies that are really looking to come up with new ways to support their talent and retain them. And so Pivot has been playing a part in that, of course, because we're giving the employees the ability to connect with people outside of work,
Mhm.
to work wherever they feel, comfortable, whether that be relocating or whether that be taking this new opportunity to work from anywhere and spending your winters in Colorado and your summers in Hawaii, and the ability to acclimate wherever you are so you can
Mhm.
focus on what matters, which is, being productive in the workplace. So,
Wow.
it's been a really interesting time for the industry and for us at Pivot.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Pivot is really improving the quality of people's lives, right? And just creating more fulfillment, in what you're doing through work, which is what, a reason why I wanted to do this special series on interviewing amazing people like you, because we want to bring humanity back into the workplace, right? We want to be able to enjoy our lives while we're working instead of just always waiting for the weekend.
Yeah.
That phrase, thank God it's Friday. I hate that. I want I want every
Yeah,
day to feel like we're getting from the day instead of just trying to get through the day or to Friday, right? And so,
exactly.
yeah, and
And Tim, just really quickly, so you mentioned the digital nomad.
mhm,
So another thing that we're seeing actually is, I think we spoke about this last time with hotel chains and
yes,
hospitality companies.
yes,
And so it's been really interesting in the sense that we've been in talks with, hotel chains,
mhm,
about coming up with new types of ways to kind of, capture these new digital nomads. And
mhm,
so what they're doing is a lot of them are saying to these digital nomads, if you don't want to pay for rent in New York or LA or London, why don't you pay us, $3,000 or whatever it is? And as a result, you can get access to any of our hotels around the world. So if you
mhm,
want to work from Miami on Tuesday and the following week, on Wednesday, work from London or Berlin, you can do so.
mhm,
And these hotel chains have been approaching us about providing pivot to these people so that they can acclimate and find community wherever they are and
yeah,
hit the ground running.
yeah,
So I think, the hospitality space is really taking a proactive approach to this digital nomad space. And also, providing hotel rooms for people that, want to just leave their home and find an office place for the day.
yeah.
You can now kind of take advantage of hotel rooms on that front as well.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I mean, the hospitality industry as a whole had to pivot, right, and had to shift and figure out how to redefine itself. And you know, within the last 5 or 6 years, I hear a lot as an entrepreneur about the laptop lifestyle, right? And for a long time, that was just kind of for the entrepreneur, that digital nomad. But now it's for employees, that you wouldn't consider entrepreneurs, right? And so now employees have that same freedom. And the idea that you could go into different, pay rent and stay in different places
Hmm.
instead of having a mortgage or having to be locked into a year-long lease somewhere. I mean, that's brilliant. It's really changing the game. And you're right on that bleeding edge, so to speak.
It's great. It's really
Yeah,
exciting.
it is. It's very exciting. So I'm going to go off. We've got our questions, but I'm going to ask you real quick here. So what's the culture like with Pivot, and what are you doing as the founder and the leader to keep your culture infused with these, with energy and with, creating more fulfilling life experiences? So what are you
It's
doing?
interesting you asked that, because that's really how, my role has shifted,
Mm-hmm.
in the last year or so as
Yeah.
we've brought on more people, is really how do you create that culture?
Yeah.
And what's really important to me and us at Pivot is walking the walk. And
Yeah.
so if we are telling our clients that you can create a strong company culture digitally,
Mm-hmm.
um, and um, that you can hold on one second. Had a little bit of having some trouble with okay. Should be good now. So yeah, so we're really doing our best we have to walk the walk.
Yes.
And so what we've been doing is we're a completely remote company.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we're doing is we're implementing a number of different things to kind of create that sense of community and belonging,
Mm-hmm.
and culture within the organization, stemming from, once a month we have a lunch and learn with a really interesting person.
Mm-hmm.
That can be, an industry leader or a magician,
Mm-hmm.
anyone that, really can bring something new to the table.
Yep.
We are implementing a social well-being day,
Mm-hmm.
in which we're still working on the pieces to the puzzle, but we'll all be implementing and working on something that has to do with social well-being and really promoting it, and maybe reaching out to 10 people
Mm-hmm.
that we haven't spoken to in a long time, or maybe lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we did, a company onsite, which was great. And I think it is so important that regardless of the fact that we are remote, that you
Mm-hmm.
do get that personal interaction,
Mm-hmm.
and not just in front of a Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
When it pertains to talking about work, but also going out for drinks and connecting on a more personal level as well.
Yeah.
But still very much in the process of shaping our culture, and really getting everyone behind our mission, which has been a really interesting time during a point where Pivot and our mission is really relevant to a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. That hybrid model is becoming the new norm of, remote workforce who actually are more productive because, they crawl out of bed, they go to their
Right.
laptop, they start working, they don't have the drive time and everything else. But some numbers suggest the anxiety's gone up as well because you never leave your house. You can't reach over to your
Absolutely.
friend and collaborate or ask questions. It's
Yeah.
slower for new hires because they can't just lean over and say, "How do you do this?" Yeah.
Exactly. And actually, we do offer a well-being stipend to all of our employees. We have unlimited PTO,
Mhm.
and really encourage, everyone to take the time off that they need. Because as you said, burnout is real, especially in a time where it's so hard to differentiate, when to actually turn your work self off and really dive into your life.
Yeah.
And so we do encourage everyone to do that. We encourage them to, take time during the day if they want to go to the gym,
Mhm.
or, spend time with their families to do that, because it really is so important, that you focus on you and being your best self to then
Yeah.
deliver, the best for the company.
You're just so much more focused and productive and engaged, and you get that discretionary effort, and people are loyal and they stay, and so
Absolutely.
yeah, just by caring about people, I like genuinely doing it, not as a strategy, right? And
Yep.
so yeah,
Exactly.
I love the unlimited PTO. I mean, that's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's important. I think people know when it's important to
Mhm.
shut off,
Yeah.
when they need to take time, and so,
Well, and the
it
fact that you're giving them the choice so that they feel like an adult. So many
right,
employees feel like they're being treated like children,
exactly,
that if you don't stand over them, they're not gonna do their job, and there's so much resentment there and stress over it that that's what lowers the productivity.
absolutely. It's
Yeah,
true.
yeah. It's very good. So many companies will collect big data on their people, but they often don't know what to do with it. And you've said that one way to use it is by paying attention to trends and what employees are asking for. So you can use this information to increase retention. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the pandemic, we did a lot of retrospective work and thought about, what role do we play in being proactive in as a solution and as really in what's the best way that the global mobility space can make an impact. And of course, everything always leads back to data. We need to know what's missing before we can, really plug in a meaningful way. And so one of the things that we started to do was we started to talk to the head of global mobility, at a number of different companies. And we started asking them, what does success look like to you? And we were just floored when we heard some of the answers, which just said, success is when we don't hear any noise from our employees. And again, we heard this actually at an industry conference. The number one reason why employees extend their time abroad is because the employer forgot that they were there. And so talk about data, talk about company, saving money and being productive with your workforce and caring about your workforce. It has to start there. And so we took initiative. We brought on a social network scientist, a couple of academics that study the future of work, and actually an expat spouse counselor. And we meet every month. And what we're trying to really work on is creating the first mobile and remote workforce human success formula. And so by that, I mean, can we come up with a way in which we can go to these employers and say, if your employees engage with PIVT in A and B ways before they move, X, Y, and Z, do X, Y, and Z within the first 6 months and X, Y, and Z within the first year, then we can predict that your employees will be, 25% more successful in their post. Here's what success looks like. And here are the red flags that if they're not doing this, you should be flagging. And so, we've been really working hard with these great experts to uncover that. And we think that if we can really come up with that formula, we can really help the industry in a big way. And then more importantly, help these people really live out, their new post in the best way possible. In addition to that, we also are at a really unique point at PIVT where we start to see data that has never been, really publicly disclosed to our industry. And by that, I mean, users traditionally would type in their questions and concerns on Google and a TripAdvisor. They're now typing that on PIVT. And this is high level data that we can now give back to these companies to drive business decisions. So these are things that, these companies are really looking forward to because it could have a very big impact in how they treat their remote workforce, what they spend money on, and a number of different factors.
It's just so awesome. Using that information to figure out how we can enhance the lives of the people that work with us is awesome, as opposed to some kind of marketing and advertising manipulation.
Yeah.
It's so good. And I love what you said about, an industry leader saying, well, when people aren't complaining, when there's no noise. And I've told this story before, but I remember running a group, and it was a very high performing team. But they were really stressed out. And so I said, let's go around the room and just share a minute or two of what's been really upsetting you. And so people went around, and then as they did, I kind of helped them reframe it and have them a different way of looking at it. And it was very positive, and everybody went around and they expressed some frustrations that they had. And then afterwards, everyone felt great. And then I walked down the hallway after the meeting with the manager and that was there. And he literally said, I'm so mad at you. I want to pick you up and throw you into the wall. And I'm like, what? And this is a very, quiet person. And I said, why? And he said, because you created an opportunity for everybody to complain.
Right.
Now everybody's going to be complaining. And he said a few other words that aren't appropriate for the podcast, but now everybody's going to be complaining about this or that. And I said, those aren't complaints. That's research. That's, understanding what people are going, what's going on in their mind, and how you can use that. I mean, whenever
Absolutely.
you're building a culture, it's always about having productive conversations.
Without question.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power. And, you can find a solution, because ultimately, look, we're seeing this with companies, where the number of people that are quitting their job or returning early is staggering. And so, if you don't know the reasons why, if you can uncover that, that's not going to stop. If you turn a blind eye.
Wow. Well said. So, Lynn, I could talk with you forever. In fact, I have some other stuff I want to chat with after this interview. But this is really amazing, and you're doing some really extraordinary good in the world. So, thank you for everything that you're doing with PIVT, and everything your team is doing as well. Where can people learn more about you and PIVT?
Thank you so much, Tim. So they can learn more at www.pivtapp.com. And as you mentioned, that's PIVTAPP.com.
Yeah, and all those links are going to be in our show notes. Lynn Greenberg, thank you very much for being such a mesmerizing guest today.
Thank you so much for having me.